Hello, I'm Andrew Thomson, in for Michael Serapio tonight. We start with the Green Party leader, who says she's now seen the full NSICOP report on foreign interference, and that she has no worries about anyone sitting in the House of Commons, claiming there's no list of MPs showing disloyalty to Canada.
We don't want to be distracted in our efforts to better understand foreign interference, better protect our democracy, by the thought that there's a list of MPs somewhere and they're traitors and should be exposed. That does not exist.
And Elizabeth May is with me now from Parliament Hill. Ms. May, good to see you. Now, you say that you were relieved after reading this unredacted report. How come?
Well, as I think as most Canadians would be, I'd been alarmed by the reports that there were the impression created was that, and I was asked by many reporters, how do you feel about sitting in Parliament where you don't know whether some of your colleagues are in fact operatives for foreign governments, are disloyal to Canada, you don't know who they are, how does that make you feel? So obviously I was alarmed. I've heard from many constituents, Saanich Gulf Islands, who are saying to me, what's going on there and how do you know who you can trust? And well, anyway, that particular narrative is deeply disturbing, and I'm very, very grateful. Well, first to David Johnston from when he was Special Rapporteur, that he created this opportunity for leaders of federal political parties to get top secret security clearance. So I asked to read the whole report, and as I read the whole report, Andrew, every time I turned a page, I was thinking, now I'm going to see this list of MPs that might be traitors. And so as I got through the report and saw no such list, and I was relieved.
Okay, so you're saying that there's no list of MPs who have shown disloyalty to Canada. You were saying earlier today that there's a handful of people involved and that there were none who were knowingly setting out to betray Canada. But
I said fewer than a handful.
Fewer than a handful, okay. But the report does say that some MPs did wittingly assist foreign states in their interference, and that the intelligence is troubling as it relates to parliamentarians. So how do you square those two items?
Well, when you read the redacted report, which is publicly available, there is one really alarming example at page 26 of a former member of Parliament who proactively, and that's the word that's used, shopped out what that MP knew to be confidential information about Canada to a foreign operative. That is the only case like that when you read the unredacted report, which has all the security information and the full conclusions of the committee. That's the one example, is that individual who's a former MP. And I believe that case should be investigated, and there should be a prosecution laid if that information from the security services is correct and it's stated as fact and documented in the unredacted report. But it's not as if that was in any way typical of the kinds of things that surfaced. There were concerning things that surfaced, for sure, about people seeking elected office in various governments, different levels of government. There's a lot to be concerned about in terms of the increasingly aggressive actions, I'd have to say, of foreign governments trying to influence Canadian policymakers. And influence is one thing, interference is another. We need to be mindful. We are, I think, blithe to the risks in this country, and we need to actually work together as parliamentarians to put in place protections for our democracy.
Okay, well, I want to build on that point, because you said earlier today in your news conference that reading this unredacted report made you change your mind in terms of how you're voting on the vote today on the Bloc Québécois motion, and this idea of expanding the mandate for the public inquiry into foreign interference to include these allegations. Other parties, as you know, are on side with this. So what caused you to change your mind and be against?
I just didn't see how kicking this hot potato over to Madam Justice Hogue was going to advance the situation. And because obviously she's got that inquiry has a very big mandate and short timelines, and they need to deal with all of what's in front of them on foreign interference. Individual investigations of MPs who, and it's particularly this former MP, and the one really egregious example that is of proactively selling out Canada. I'm using short form language here, and I hope not to skim over anything in terms of details. That's really not Madam Justice Hogue's business, and I'm not sure how her inquiry would actually advance where we are right now, and it would also take a long time. And democracy is fragile, and the foreign governments that want to undermine Canada want to damage our democracy. I want to protect our democracy, so I want answers to Canadians sooner than later, and I think that requires more of my colleagues who have access to top secret security clearance getting it, and let's put partisanship to the side and work with the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, plus others who will work with us, whether CSIS or Privy Council Office, other cabinet ministers, whatever. We can figure this out as parliamentarians, and I'm very relieved that we don't have to answer questions about whether we trust the people with whom we work day to day. Because as I said, there's nothing in the unredacted full report of the committee that makes me at all concerned that any current sitting member of Parliament has put the interests of a foreign government ahead of their commitment to Canada.
Okay, very quickly, I want to ask you one last question. Then you're talking about some of the things you want to see next in terms of classified briefings, in terms of political leaders taking action. Bill, of course, the bill on foreign interference is going through Parliament right now. Are there further specific measures that you would want to see in the short term? Absolutely. We take an oath of office, and as we're sworn in as MPs, we swear to have loyalty. Now, of course, it's a form of words that translates to Canada, but it's because we're a constitutional monarchy. I swore allegiance when I was sworn in to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Now we'd swear to King Charles III, but that's not swearing an oath to an individual who lives in another country. We're swearing an oath of allegiance to our country. That is the bare minimum that our citizens expect of us as their representatives here in Ottawa. But it doesn't have real consequences if someone violates their oath. If they decide, I think I could make a bit of extra money over here or over there. I'm not saying that's happened in this current Parliament or that I've seen any examples of putting personal financial interest ahead of Canada. But if you were to do that, there's nothing right now. The commissioner for the ethics commissioner doesn't test the oath of office. There's no investigatory arm of the ethics commissioner. I think that's where it could reside. The ethics commissioner could liaise more frequently or at all with our intelligence services, such that individual members of Parliament should be brought. I mean, you wouldn't think you'd have to point it out to people, but I've already brought a complaint to the ethics commissioner once about an MP who put personal financial interests above Canada. The ethics commissioner's conclusion was, well, that's really not a thing. There's nothing to do about that. So I'd like to make the oath of office have consequences. I'd also like to see us do more to ensure, I mean, because the targeting by foreign actors of Canadians includes not only people running for office, but their political staff, community groups that could be co-opted by foreign money and sponsorships. We need to pay attention to this much more as a country, and every recommendation from the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians should be adopted and enforced and implemented by the Prime Minister's office and the Government of Canada, top to bottom. All right. Elizabeth May, thank you so much for your time on this.
Thank you.